When companies like BYD and Tesla were racing ahead, the EV world had started to feel predictable. Every new update sounding the same with bigger batteries, faster charging, and smarter software, as if the entire industry was moving in one single direction without questioning it. And then, quietly, without any loud announcement or dramatic reveal, Toyota made a move that didn't demand attention at first, but slowly began pulling the entire global market toward itself. Not with something extreme or futuristic, but with something simple. The Toyota Urban Cruiser EV, a compact electric SUV priced at around $23,000. At first, it feels like the kind of launch most people would scroll past without a second thought. On the surface, it doesn't look like a disruption. It looks ordinary, almost too ordinary to matter. But that is exactly where the story begins to shift. Because the biggest changes don't always arrive with noise. They don't always come with bold claims or dramatic reveals. Sometimes they enter quietly, and then start changing everything underneath. This car was never designed to shock you instantly or dominate headlines overnight. It was built with a deeper intention, one that slowly pulls you in and makes you question things. Why would a company like Toyota, known for moving carefully and playing the long game, suddenly take this direction? Why step into the most competitive and price-sensitive part of the market? And why now, when everyone else is focused on a completely different path? And that is the moment where the realization hits. This is not just another EV launch. It is a signal. A quiet but powerful signal that while the rest of the industry is busy playing the same game, Toyota might be playing something entirely different. Before we go deeper into this launch, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. When you look deeper, the picture starts to change. What seemed like a simple launch begins to reveal something far more calculated. You start to notice that this is not a one-off decision, but part of a much larger and carefully structured strategy. Right now, almost every company in the EV space is moving in the same direction. The focus is clear: more power, more features, more technology. Cars are becoming faster, smarter, and more premium with every new release. And naturally, the target audience has shifted toward those who are willing to spend more for that experience. But this is where Toyota breaks away from the pattern. Instead of competing at the top, it quietly steps in from the other side. Not chasing the most expensive segment, but moving toward the largest one. The common buyer, the middle-class customer, the person who is not looking for the fastest car on the road, but for something dependable, something that fits within a budget, something that can be used every day without worry. And that shift changes everything. Because the real strength of the auto industry has never been built on luxury. It has always come from scale, from millions of everyday users choosing practicality over performance, value over hype. And that is exactly where this move begins to feel different. Not louder, not flashier, but far more powerful in the long run. This is why experts are now starting to ask serious questions. The kind of questions that don't come from hype, but from curiosity mixed with doubt. How can a company deliver an electric SUV at this price without cutting corners on reliability? What kind of battery strategy is being used inside this vehicle that allows such cost control without compromising long-term performance? And more importantly, is this really just an affordable EV? Or is something much bigger taking shape behind the scenes? Because when you step back and look at the broader picture, a pattern begins to appear. While most of the industry is focused entirely on electric vehicles, Toyota is moving in multiple directions at the same time. Not loudly, not aggressively, but steadily. On one side, it continues to refine hybrid systems that have already proven themselves in the real world. On another, it is exploring alternative fuels that could reduce dependence on traditional energy sources. And alongside all of this, it is quietly investing in next-generation engine technologies that most people are not even paying attention to yet. And that is where the bigger question starts to take shape. Is Toyota simply adapting to the EV trend? Or is it preparing to challenge the very idea that electric vehicles are the only future? Before we go deeper into this new direction, it is important to understand where all of this is coming from. Because Toyota is not just reacting to the future, it has been shaping the industry for decades. The company was founded in 1937, and over time, it built its identity not on speed or luxury, but on reliability, efficiency, and long-term trust. While others focused on performance and innovation cycles, Toyota focused on something more fundamental: making cars that last. Cars that people could depend on for years without constant problems. This approach slowly turned into one of the strongest foundations in the auto industry. The introduction of systems like lean manufacturing and continuous improvement allowed Toyota to scale without losing consistency. And over time, that consistency became its biggest strength. Now, if you look at where that journey has led, the numbers start to tell their own story. In 2025, Toyota achieved record-breaking global sales. The combined group, including Toyota, Lexus, Daihatsu, and Hino, sold around 11.32 million vehicles worldwide. Out of this, Toyota and Lexus alone contributed approximately 10.5 million units, continuing a steady upward trend. This is not just market leadership. This is dominance built layer by layer over decades. If you break it down further, the scale becomes even more striking. Nearly 31,000 vehicles sold every single day. Close to 1,300 vehicles every hour. This is not just production. It is a system operating at a global level with remarkable consistency. From North America to Japan, from Europe to Southeast Asia, and across emerging markets, Toyota has built a presence that few companies can match. But what makes this even more interesting is what the company is doing right now. Instead of relying only on its past success, Toyota is actively reshaping its future through multiple parallel programs. One of its strongest areas continues to be hybrid technology, where it remains a global leader. Millions of hybrid vehicles on the road today are a direct result of years of refinement and real-world testing. At the same time, the company is expanding into fully electric vehicles, but in a more measured and calculated way. Instead of rushing into high-end EVs, it is focusing on affordability and accessibility, aiming to bring electric mobility to a much wider audience. Alongside this, Toyota is investing heavily in next-generation battery development, trying to reduce costs while improving durability and safety. The goal is not just better performance, but long-term usability for everyday customers. And then there is another layer, one that is not always in the spotlight. The company is continuing its work on alternative energy solutions, including hydrogen-based systems and advanced engine technologies that can work beyond traditional fuel and battery limitations. This multi-directional approach may not look aggressive from the outside, but it reflects a deeper strategy. Toyota is not building for one version of the future. It is preparing for multiple possibilities at the same time. But even at this scale, there is one area where Toyota does not dominate in the same way: pure electric vehicles. In 2025, the company sold around 199,000 fully electric cars. On the surface, that number reflects strong growth compared to the previous year. But when you place it next to Toyota's total global sales, the contrast becomes clear. It is still a relatively small portion of the whole. And this is not a gap created by delay. It is the result of a conscious decision. Toyota never believed in rushing toward a single technology just because the industry was moving in that direction. Instead of committing everything to EVs, it chose to move carefully, building a foundation that could last. That foundation was hybrid technology. In the same year, Toyota sold around 4.4 million hybrid vehicles. When combined with its electric cars, the total number of electrified vehicles reached nearly 5 million units, almost half of its entire global sales. This is where the difference in thinking becomes visible. While many companies tried to accelerate the transition as quickly as possible, Toyota focused on making that transition practical. A system where customers could gradually shift from traditional engines to electrified vehicles without sudden cost pressure, infrastructure challenges, or lifestyle changes. It was not designed to win headlines. It was designed to work in the real world.
Now, that carefully built strategy is entering its next phase. Toyota is no longer limited to hybrids. It is expanding into electric vehicles, but in a way that aligns with its long-term philosophy. Instead of starting with high-priced premium models, it is moving toward affordability. Vehicles that are accessible to a larger audience, not just a small segment of early adopters. At the same time, the company is continuing to invest in technologies that go beyond batteries. Systems that could reduce dependence on charging infrastructure and offer alternative ways to power vehicles in the future. This dual approach is not accidental. It reflects a deeper intention. The goal is becoming increasingly clear. Toyota is not trying to build one perfect solution. It is trying to build a complete ecosystem. An ecosystem that covers every type of customer, from small city cars designed for daily commuting to family SUVs built for comfort and practicality, from budget-friendly vehicles that focus on value to advanced technologies that prepare for what comes next. Not by choosing a single direction, but by keeping multiple doors open at the same time. And in a market where most companies are moving in one straight line, that flexibility itself becomes a powerful advantage. One of the biggest strengths behind all of this is something that cannot be measured in numbers: trust. For decades, people have bought cars from Toyota with a simple expectation that the car will last, not just for a few years, but for a long time without major issues. Maintenance remains straightforward. Spare parts are available almost everywhere, and no matter which country you are in, the ownership experience feels consistent and predictable. This is not something that is built overnight. It is the result of years of discipline, engineering, and a clear understanding of what customers actually value. And this is exactly what many new EV companies are still trying to achieve. Now the discussion is no longer limited to one car or one segment. The real question begins to shift toward the future, toward what Toyota is actually building behind the scenes. The company has already set clear targets to expand its presence in the electric vehicle space over the coming years. At the same time, it is working continuously to reduce battery costs and improve accessibility, so that electric mobility is not limited to a small group of buyers, but reaches the larger market. But beyond this visible direction, there is another layer. Toyota is also investing in technologies that could reduce dependence on batteries themselves, because the company is working with a different assumption, that the future of mobility may not be defined by a single solution. It may not be only electric. It may not be only one technology dominating everything else. Instead, it could be a combination of multiple systems working together, each solving a different problem. And this is where the contrast becomes clear. While companies like Tesla are fully committed to a battery-driven future, and companies like BYD are scaling battery production at an aggressive pace, Toyota is building something parallel. A path that includes electric vehicles, but does not depend entirely on them. Which brings us to a deeper question. Is Toyota late to the EV race? Or is it simply playing a completely different game? Because sometimes, the company that appears slow from the outside is actually preparing for a much larger shift underneath. And this is where the story takes a more interesting turn. After understanding this strategy, one question becomes difficult to ignore. If the entire world is moving toward electric vehicles, then why is Toyota still investing in something else? What exactly is this new engine that experts are referring to? In recent years, statements coming from Toyota's leadership have started to draw attention across the industry. Instead of fully committing to a battery-only future, the company is actively working on next-generation engine technologies that can operate on alternative fuels. This includes advanced hybrid systems that are becoming more efficient with each iteration and, more importantly, hydrogen-based engines that offer a completely different direction. At first, this may sound like a step backward, but when you look closer, it begins to feel like a different kind of progress. To understand this, you have to look at electric vehicles beyond their ideal image. On paper, EVs represent a clean and efficient solution. Zero emissions, smooth driving, and lower running costs. But in real-world conditions, the challenges are still present. Charging infrastructure is uneven across regions. Charging time remains significantly higher compared to traditional refueling. Battery costs continue to influence the overall price of the vehicle. And over time, degradation becomes a factor that cannot be ignored for long-term ownership. This is exactly where Toyota's thinking begins to separate itself. Instead of focusing only on improving batteries, it is asking a more fundamental question. What if the dependency on batteries itself can be reduced? One of the strongest answers to that question is hydrogen. Toyota has been working on hydrogen technology for years, but now it is approaching it with a stronger focus on practicality and scale. Unlike battery-powered vehicles, hydrogen systems can be refueled in a matter of minutes, much like petrol or diesel cars. At the same time, emissions are almost zero, with water vapor being the primary output. This combination changes the equation. It offers speed without compromising cleanliness. But the approach does not stop there. Toyota is also exploring engines that can run on alternative fuels while still retaining the core structure of traditional internal combustion systems. This is a critical detail, because it means existing manufacturing systems do not need to be completely replaced. They can be adapted, improved, upgraded. This reduces overall cost, increases scalability, and makes the transition more practical for both manufacturers and customers. And this is where the larger picture begins to form. While others are building entirely new systems from the ground up, Toyota is finding ways to evolve what already exists, while preparing for what comes next. Now think about what this approach really means, not just as a new technology, but as a shift in the entire direction of the industry. For years, the EV space has been moving with a clear belief that bigger batteries, longer range, and faster charging are the only path forward. And almost every company has been following that same idea without questioning it. But now imagine something different entering that space, a vehicle that can be refueled in minutes, like a petrol car, without waiting, without planning your day around charging stations, and at the same time producing emissions as low as an electric vehicle, while still offering the kind of reliability that comes from decades of engineering experience. If all of this comes together in one system, then it does not just compete with electric vehicles, it begins to challenge the very foundation on which they are built. This is where companies like Tesla could begin to feel a real shift happening beneath the surface, because Tesla's entire ecosystem is designed around batteries, charging networks, and software-driven systems. And that model works as long as the world continues to move in that direction. But if an alternative appears that removes the need for long charging times and reduces dependence on large and expensive battery packs, then the advantage that once looked unshakable starts to weaken, not suddenly, but gradually, as the market begins to explore other possibilities. The same situation could unfold for BYD, a company that has built its strength on large-scale battery production and affordable EVs, because its entire growth story is closely connected to the demand for batteries. If the future begins to move toward solutions that rely less on batteries, then the balance of power could start shifting in unexpected ways, not because BYD is failing, but because the rules of the game are changing. And this is exactly what makes Toyota's move so different, because it is not trying to build a better version of the same product. It is trying to step outside the existing framework and look at the problem from a completely different angle. This is not about beating competitors in speed, range, or software, but about questioning whether the current path is the only path. That is why this moment feels important, because it is no longer just a competition between companies trying to sell more cars, it is a competition between ideas, between two different visions of how the future of mobility should look. One vision believes that everything will eventually become electric, that batteries will power the entire system, and all progress will happen within that structure, while the other vision sees the future as more flexible, where multiple technologies exist together and each one solves a different problem depending on the situation. And Toyota is clearly moving toward that second vision, a future where electric vehicles are important but not the only solution, where hybrids continue to evolve, where hydrogen finds its place, and where alternative fuels open new possibilities that are not limited by battery constraints. If this strategy works, the impact could be far bigger than expected, because the industry may no longer move in a single straight line, but instead split into multiple paths, with different regions choosing what works best for them and different use cases demanding different technologies, creating a system that is more adaptable rather than dependent on one dominant solution.
And in that kind of future, Toyota gains a unique advantage because it is already present in all these areas. It has years of experience in hybrids. It is steadily building its position in electric vehicles, and at the same time, it is investing heavily in next-generation engine technologies that others are still uncertain about. Which brings everything back to one powerful question: is Toyota late to the EV revolution, or is it quietly preparing for something beyond it? Because if this new engine technology becomes practical and scalable, then the future of mobility may not belong only to electric vehicles. It may belong to the company that kept its options open while everyone else chose a single path. And if that happens, the biggest disruption in the EV industry will not come from a better battery, but from a completely different way of thinking.